Coach Stonewall on International Poetry Slam, which was like so dope. It was the first time that anything like that has ever happened. So it was like my debut. And it was like some of the best poets in the country, and I made it to final stage on my first go round. And I was like, oh, like this is cute. But also, like, full disclosure, I was having panic attacks like every day there. I was like, what is this? You know, and I think it's also looking back, like showing like what your path is for you, and you can fight it or you can ride the wave, and realizing like I've had all of these moments. It's really about me getting out of my own way when it comes to pursuing this life.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'm so happy you came by. The Queerly Blax Show aims to normalize the everyday existence of Black, LGBTQIA+ individuals through an interview-style series with regular folks like you and me. So every week, a new guest shares their story and unique perspective on their existence as an LGBTQIA+ individual. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe, download, set your reminders to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'm joined today by a very special guest. You might know her on social media as, and she's here, but her name is Kelsey. And we're going to talk to Kelsey today. Tell the people about yourself.
Hey, my name is Kelsey. My pronouns are she and they. And I'm an artist, organizer, baddie, scholar from Southeast San Diego. And I'm just really passionate about creating spaces for folks to share their story, creating community, talking shit, and really being intentional and talking about dreaming as like a real practice that we get to tap back into, especially Black folks.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And we're going to get into all that. But before we do, here at the Queerly Blax Show, we got to get that coming out story. When did you know that you liked ladies, people who identify as other? When was that exploration process for you?
I think pretty young, I questioned the idea of like, wait, so it's only men and women. So I grew up like very much with some religious, all the things. I remember questioning, like my mom, I had a crush on a girl at school, and like hearing in church, like the Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve thing. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I think when my stepfather came to the picture, there was so much other religious things that I thought I was going to hell for, that like queerness wasn't even like the top 5. And then I think when I got to college, like once again, just like honoring and opening myself up to it. And I think I accepted that I was queer and my friends before I ever publicly shared, until like my late 20s. But then it was not like a coming out thing. It's just, I just started calling myself queer and everybody rocked with it. And I told my mom and dad, like pretty close together, kind of just like, this is it. And my dad was like, what does that mean? Because I said queer instead of bi.
Right.
And I was like, kind of like bi. And, and he was like, all right. And my mom was like, I don't care who you love, if it's a woman, like as long as like you're happy. So it's a really interesting thing of like, after years of kind of hearing this rhetoric around like anti-queerness, their process, I think, has been interesting to see them come into it, and like having to educate them as well, of course. But I think they are a lot more open later in life than they demonstrated they would be earlier.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's definitely something that most of us experience, just being especially Black, you know, the church being a strong pillar of us surviving slavery and kind of, you know, just continuing to be the foundation of everything that we do. Talk about the first time that you I'd say lived into what to some people, you know, or actually you identify as like, you know, the freedom, right? Like to just be like, you know what, this is me, man. Like, this is who I am. This is what it is. And we gonna go with it, right? Because I think that process of going from growing up in a religious family to unwinding that and being able to identify with yourself is really hard for people. So like, what were some of those things for you, like the mindsets of like, man, I'm just rocking with this?
I think I always say being aware around queer folks before I even gave myself permission to like actively identify was liberating, right? There's this quote, there are two quotes that I was like, oh, um, Bell Hooks has a quote like queer not just being as who you have sex with, but like it's being at odds with society and the world around you, right? And then there's another one who I'm going to fuck up his name, Ocean Vuong, I think, who talked about like queerness being the thing that saved his life, right? And so I think like being around some of the folks who became like my really good friends, like and seeing like, oh, like it's not misery, it's not the hell that I was promised, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that there is something beautiful about knowing yourself deeply beyond what the world has handed to you.
Yeah.
Um, and it really was just like, I don't know, I feel like my journey into this was just like an expansion, right? It wasn't that it was taken away from anything. It was like, oh, I identify as queer, like if I have to get into the nuts of it, right? Like bi,
Yeah.
and non-binary womanhood, right? But it's really just about the fact that like all of these things that I was handed that said you have to check a box doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
And how I move in my life fully is about this idea of I choose what makes sense for me versus what the world has said made sense. And so I don't know if to answer your question. I'd be going on
Yeah,
tangent.
yeah, no, that's good. But one thing you did speak about that I want to expand on a little bit is non-binary womanhood. I think as
Mhm.
we navigate into the hetero space, the kind of more politicized places where we have to check boxes, right? A lot of times, even in my day job, there's conversations about we have employees that identify as non-binary, and but the structure is set up to be either Miss or Mister, right?
Yeah.
And so identifying as she, they, going into spaces where they is not really categorically acknowledged, right? um
Mhm.
how do you navigate that, and how did you define that for yourself?
I think it was once again kind of just seeing like mirrors. Actually, on Facebook, I got invited into this group and it was like magical fat black femmes, right? That a friend invited me to, and just kind of seeing how folks for the first time, and even in this like virtual space, people identifying like beyond, like you said, like just
Hmm.
this box and that box. Um, and I think kind of similar to like queerness in terms of sexuality, realizing like there are some things I was handed that don't resonate with me, right? And I always said, even before I kind of came into the idea of calling myself non-binary femme, non-binary woman, like I woman differently than the woman who raised me and who
Yeah.
womaned me into being, right? And I can honor, I I honor like womanhood. I honor all of these things. And I also know that like there are, like I always say, like I'm a woman, but I don't believe in being a lady, right? And this like very intentional construct of like what it has to look like. Um, and so that was kind of like just my coming into understanding, like, oh, I don't have to check these boxes that don't serve me. And I don't have to choose choose to lean all into one thing because I don't check into the other. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, and so yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually funny. I did a pride event for my friend's job last month, and we were talking a little bit about, I wrote a piece about like coming out looks like coming into the liberation I always deserved. And it was more of that, like of I feel like I invited people into this internal conversation I've been having for a while about renegotiating what life looked like for me on my own terms. And so um that's really kind of what it looks like. And I feel like as I come into different layers, I just start, kind of speaking them out loud and like allowing myself to see what feels
you
right for
start
me.
you start talking shit.
Right.
When did that become a part of your kind of, along with just poetry and expression, as a defined thing, like this is what we do, like what when was that for you?
I think it's been a journey of just, and like, so this is where the overlap of like all these identities like shared show up together. And I think of like the arc of my 20s of of going through a lot of shit with family and mental health and coming into myself and coming in as a poet, and realizing like the words I speak over myself matter. Like
Yeah.
telling my story, how I tell it matters, right? And I think it just started permeating in different parts of my life and learning to like not just love and accept my body, but being in my body, right? Learning to be in my story, in wherever life has taken me, and understanding that shame isn't something I have to. I grew up with so much shame because of like the life that I came through, right? Like, and especially in this like very religiously toxic like environment, like thinking like I have to compartmentalize pieces of myself and I have
Yeah.
to stuff parts of me down. And when I started to realize like, no, that is like a tool to control me, like it started showing up in freedom in all these other ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you're I mean, when you to shift to your artwork, you talk about everything. Do you remember
yeah.
your first poem?
Ooh. I think the first, like I've always written, but I think like the first poems that I feel like I remember writing was in 10th grade. We had like a poetry unit with my teacher, Miss Larkin. Shout out to her. She's my fave still. Um, and we had to write like a bunch of different poems. And the one that like I like performed everywhere after I wrote it was like the stereotype poem. And looking back, I'm like, there's some problematic respectability pieces, but I see where you're going, babes. Like, but it was like, you know, when you look at me, you assume all these different things about me, and this is actually who I am. And it's funny that that was the first piece that like I said, like carried me. I performed at open mics and like even like when I got to college. Um, and I think it speaks to the power of just like writing be a medium for me to speak over myself, even when I don't always feel present in it. I feel
Yeah.
like it's this opportunity for me to remember you are who you say you are, even if you don't feel it.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the first poems I remember reciting to myself that wasn't my poems was a Phenomenal Woman by Maya
Of
Angelou.
course.
And so it's
Classic.
like that's the legacy, you know,
Yeah.
of art that I come from, is this ability to speak yourself into being, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. What kind of freedom does it give you to write freely through your poetry?
I think it really, it's funny, I just did a workshop this weekend about writing as a way to time travel with yourself, right? And leave messages. Like there's the concept, a Dinker concept of Sankofa, which means like
Yeah.
go back and get it. It's not wrong to go back and get what's at risk of being lost. And what has my writing journey, like, you know, like I'm known for doing spoken word and poetry, performance poetry, but especially during the pandemic has been these like really like dreamy internal messages to myself more than I think I ever have before. And it's been a way, the liberation practice of being able to say like, hey, but you make it, you survive. Like, you know, these are the things that are important, even when it feels like it's crazy all around you. Um, and I think that's been really important for me, like being able to use my writing not just to inspire others, but to give to myself intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been your journey as a full-time poet, right? Because I think in the creative space, especially, I think there are a lot of people who aspire to do that, right? Like to take and be able to be, full-time creators in whatever their art is. What's that journey been for you? Like, do you remember the first like big moment that you had where you were like, oh, we really out here, like what are some of those highlights that you've had throughout your journey that have made you just be like, you know what, like we really about to do this?
So the first piece is my journey into being a full-time creative came through trauma. Like the pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um and my job was on some fuckery. We're not gonna go into too many details, but it was just like
Mm-hmm. Like a
they
lot of
wanted,
people's, yeah.
you know, they wanted me to come back into the office. I was like, no,
Yeah.
like for me to compromise all these things. And so it kind of like transitioned into like by the grace of God, everybody holding me upstairs. Um, I was able to like get unemployment, be able to like secure gigs, you know, during the pandemic, doing like workshops and performances and things like that. And it's kind of just haven't stopped. And I've been able to secure like grants and all this other stuff. But it's really been a journey. It's I feel really confident that like it's only going to keep increasing. One of the things that like felt like, oh, like this can be a thing is I went to my very first slam festival. So there's like poetry slams, for folks who don't know, like is like a competition, like it's like a sport for poetry.
Yeah.
And so I did it like a little bit like before the pandemic, like, but never like really full out, right? But I went to like a festival in Baltimore with like some of the best poets in the world. It was actually my first festival, was a queer festival called Stonewall
Nice.
International Poetry Slam, which was like so dope. It was the first time that anything like that has ever happened. So it was like my debut. And it was like some of the best poets in the country, and I made it to final stage on my first go round. And I was like, oh, like this is cute. But also like full disclosure, I was having panic attacks like every day there. I was like, this, what is this? You know, and I think it's also looking back, like showing like what your path is for you, and you can fight it or you can ride the wave, and realizing like I've had all of these moments. It's really about me getting out of my own way when it comes to pursuing this life, because and realizing that my shit resonates outside of just me in my mirror. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
and that was kind of the trajectory. I've been able to open for Rupi Kaur, who's like a really popular poet. She was on her world tour, and when she came to San Diego, I got to open for her, and it was beautiful, like being on such a big stage in my hometown and knowing like this is what I want to be able to do.
Yeah.
These are the type of experiences I want to be able to create for people to see themselves. Yeah.
I love that. No, I love that. All right, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. We're gonna get in your business just a little bit.
Okie dokie.
Talk about your dating life. What's going on?
What's going on is, I was gonna say nothing, but that's not true. I mean, it's really just I'm in a space of
You
giving
got somebody,
myself
but you ain't trying to
permission.
make it official. Yeah.
No, like it's more about giving myself permission to get back out there. I had like a really interestingly, I was gonna say interestingly toxic moment during the pandemic, and I think like reminding myself that the world is not just that. And so giving myself permission to like, I feel like we're finally in the, well, pandemic still exists. I'm not going to minimize that, but in this like outsideness.
Yeah.
And so I'm allowing myself to just like float. And you know, be present. I'll say that. That's very vague. But be,
what's your type? Somebody single out there. Describe your person.
my person is funny, interesting. I say that because I think as somebody who's very has a lot of dreams and ambitions, like dating someone who is also like on that, and making the commitment to not be like, oh, that's what's up person. Like, you know, if I'm talking about my dreams, like you got something else to contribute.
Bring to it. Yeah. Oh, that's what's up.
Right. Like, you know,
I'm
like,
never
oh,
gonna say that again.
no, listen, like there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just like, you know, like, oh, that's what's up. You don't have nothing else to volley back. Like you know, that's my thing. I Black. I'm, you know, open to all gender identities, more into masculine center folks, but I also, you know, date femmes. Interesting, funny, creative. They don't have to do the exact same thing as me, but like having some type of outlet and practice and doing their healing work, their shadow work.
Say that again.
Their shadow work. Because I think it's something that's really important. And I think it doesn't have to just look like going to therapy. Like therapy is important, but like being aware of where your triggers are, being able to vocalize what your needs are. You know, like that's something that's I feel like what I've been doing,
Yeah,
especially I think over the pandemic, we all had the time to sit with ourselves,
100%.
um, and should be like brought to the surface. And so that's something that I'm passionate about the people that I'm in relationship with in general, romantic or platonic, that we are all kind of doing that thing.
No, I am a proponent of self-work, healing, being able to be in touch with yourself, your feelings, all of that, because, especially in relationship, I'm over 30, 32 to be exact. I'll be 33 in September. I
Oh, really?
think
When your
as
birthday?
we September 5th.
Oh, I'm fourth. Come on,
Oh, nice. Oh, Beyonce.
Virgos.
Okay. All right now. Um, I think that in seeing relationships unfold, being in a long-term relationship myself, um, there's a lot that goes on, both in life and relationship and all of that. And I think the more in tune and in touch with yourself you are, the better you can navigate all the things that come along with it, especially when you start adding marriage, kids, and all the things and complications, jobs, something like COVID, and all of that. I think it just reveals how much is still under there, and how much is not is still yet left to be desired and discovered by many people. So advocating for people to go do that self work, for sure. Cool, man. So before we get out of here, we're gonna play a quick game of this or that.
Okay.
So you ready to go?
Yes.
Let's do it. Sports bra or underwire bra?
Sports bra.
Laundry or cooking?
Cooking.
Day at the spa or watching sports all day?
Spa.
She's like, girl, I couldn't tell you a basketball player. Short hair or long hair?
For me or others?
Everybody always asks me that too. Like or you can answer for both, for yourself and then for your, like, if you were dating a person, like what you would want them to have.
Short for me, I don't know. It could be short
Long
for them
dreads.
too.
Look, long
Well,
dreads.
okay, long if they dreads, yes.
Yeah. Lipstick or lip gloss?
Lipstick.
Sports car or big truck?
Big truck.
Big wedding or small ceremony?
Small ceremony, big reception.
Boom. Party. Stay up late or sleep in?
Sleep in.
Iron or
stay up late.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. It's kind of the same, because if you stand up late, you sleeping in, but yeah. Iron or re-dry it?
You said iron or what?
Re-dry it. Put it back in the dryer to get the wrinkles out.
Oh, re-dry it.
Pay or have her pay? You big daddy or you?
I was like, what's the most? Have them pay.
Pillow princess or I'm on top?
Pillow. Why we getting in there?
Hey. I'll throw everybody off with that one. I appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me at and she's here _ on Instagram, Twitter. I'm gonna be on there eventually. Yeah. And you can find my website, kelsey'shere.com. Yeah, I'll be out here on the internet.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll put all your information when the episode comes out. I'll put it all in the bio and everything so people can contact you, reach out, connect. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for coming on, sharing your story. Really appreciate all the gems you dropped. Y'all go check her out. Super dope poet. And yeah, man, y'all already know it's another episode of Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.